It was one of those evenings when the world seemed calm, and my friend and I decided to take a stroll, get some fresh air, and enjoy a cold beer. We wandered into a small store, not expecting anything out of the ordinary, just looking for something to drink. And then, there she was. The moment I laid eyes on her, it was like the air around her shimmered, beautiful, radiant, with a kind of allure that made it impossible to look away. I stood there, captivated, trying to find the courage to say something. My heart raced, but somehow, I gathered the nerve. I don't even remember what I said, but it worked. We struck up a conversation, and I couldn't believe my luck. That night felt like the beginning of something electric, something that would change my life. From there, everything unfolded naturally. We started chatting more often, texting each other back and forth. Before I knew it, we were meeting up to take walks, grabbing coffee, talking for hours. Slowly, but surely, something deeper began to grow. With every step we took together, it felt like I was getting closer to a place I'd been searching for but never quite knew how to find. A year after that magical first encounter, we took the plunge and got married. It felt like the natural next step in a relationship that had only deepened with time. Our love was solid, unshakable, or so I believed. Just a year after our wedding, we were blessed with a beautiful baby girl. The moment I held her in my arms, something shifted inside me. I had never felt such happiness, such fulfillment. I wanted to give everything to my two girls, to make sure they were loved and cared for in every possible way. As time passed, I threw myself into being the best husband and father I could be. I was there for every smile, every cry, every moment in between. My wife and I shared sleepless nights, but it didn't matter. I felt like we were a team, unstoppable, facing life together. But as our little one reached 6 months, reality hit hard. I knew I had to find a better way to provide for them. The job opportunities in our city were slim, and I didn't want my family to live on mere scraps when they deserved so much more. So I made the difficult decision to take a job that required me to be away for 3 months. It wasn't easy, leaving them behind, but I thought it was the right thing to do. I imagined coming back, providing them with everything they needed, and being welcomed home like a hero. But when I returned from that long stretch of work, something felt off. I brushed it aside at first, thinking it was just me overthinking after being away for so long. But then, one evening, as I was going through the computer looking for something, I stumbled upon a conversation my wife had been having. At first, I thought nothing of it, until I saw what was written. The words on the screen made my heart stop, my breath hitch. I sat there, frozen, unable to believe what I was reading. Everything changed in that moment. As I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I had just read, my heart sank deeper with every word. It wasn't just a conversation between my wife and an old friend. It was something far more intimate, far more personal. They weren't just exchanging pleasantries. No, this was a whole other level. She had been telling him that she wasn't living with me, that I had been unfaithful to her, and that I wasn't giving her any money. She painted a picture of me as a neglectful, deceitful husband, the exact opposite of everything I had ever tried to be. But the worst part? The photos. They had been exchanging explicit pictures, things I never imagined my wife sending to anyone but me. And then, there was the message that broke me. She was telling him how much she wanted to be with him, how she wanted him to spank her in the shower. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor had been ripped from beneath me, and I was free falling into an abyss of betrayal. When I confronted her, I expected some sort of explanation, some reason that would make sense of this nightmare. But instead, she denied everything. She told me her account had been hacked or that her sister, who knew her password, must have been the one writing those messages. The more she spoke, the more I realized it was all a lie. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice. I knew her too well. She was trying to cover up the truth, to bury her guilt under flimsy excuses. It took a week of silence, tension, and painful conversations before she finally admitted it. She confessed that, yes, she had been talking to him. She didn't know why she did it, she said. She claimed it was a moment of weakness, something that would never happen again. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So, I forgave her, thinking that this was just a one-time mistake, something we could move past. I held on to hope, hoping against hope that this would be the end of it. But, of course, it wasn't. Sometime after that, my wife and I decided to visit her parents. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend, a chance to disconnect and spend time with family. Everything seemed fine at first. We sat down, shared a meal, had a few drinks, and eventually went to bed after the long drive, exhausted but content. The next morning, as we were settling into the day, my phone rang. It was my mother. What she told me sent a shockwave through my entire body. She had learned that my wife had pawned off all the gold jewelry I had gifted her over the years. Chains, earrings, bracelets, even her wedding ring. But that wasn't even the worst of it. No, the real gut punch came when I found out she had taken the gold earrings and chain we had given our daughter on her first birthday and pawned those too. I was stunned. My heart pounded as the betrayal set in even deeper. How could she do something like this? Taking gifts meant for our little girl, gifts of love and memory, and turning them into cash as if they meant nothing? My thoughts spiraled, anger building up inside me, making it hard to breathe. I felt sick to my stomach, unable to comprehend how someone I thought I knew so well could do something so callous. After the initial shock, I decided to tell her mother what I had just found out, thinking she would help me talk some sense into my wife. But when I told her, I was met with the most dismissive response I could have imagined. "Well," her mother said calmly, "I suppose she had her reasons. It must have been necessary." That answer knocked the wind out of me. Instead of showing any concern, any hint of regret or responsibility, she brushed it off like it was nothing. Like the betrayal, the lies, the theft, all of it was somehow justified. I didn't know what to think, how to react. I felt utterly alone, abandoned by the people who were supposed to be my family. My wife started crying, insisting that I just didn't understand how hard it was to manage everything without enough money, that our child needed diapers, food, and all the other essentials. She painted herself as someone desperate and overwhelmed. But here's the thing. She always had money. My parents constantly helped her out, handing her cash every time she went out with the baby. To make matters worse, she had been living with them in their house, free of charge. No rent, no bills to pay, not even groceries to worry about. Everything was taken care of for her. I couldn't believe the excuses she was throwing at me. My frustration boiled over, and the very next day, I packed my things and left, heading back home. But as much as I was furious, I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. Guilt for leaving our child in the middle of all this. The innocent one caught in the storm. A week later, she returned, this time bringing our daughter with her. I forgave her again, hoping that this would be the last of our troubles. I didn't want our child to grow up in a broken family, and I clung to the hope that things would finally settle down. For a while, it seemed like things were getting better. We found some semblance of peace, and soon, I left for a 6-month job in Poland, doing everything I could to support them. I came back in early December, just before our daughter's birthday. We celebrated together, but something had changed. My wife was distant, cold, and every little thing seemed to spark an argument. The tension was unbearable. On December 30th, seemingly out of nowhere, she decided to pack her things and leave, taking our child with her. I was completely blindsided. It was as if everything we'd built together crumbled in an instant. My heart felt like it was being torn apart, and the weight of the situation pressed down on me like never before. It wasn't until after she left that I learned the bitter truth. She had been unfaithful. It felt like a knockout blow. Discovering that my wife had been unfaithful with not just one, but 3 men. It was devastating, beyond anything words could capture. My world, already shaken, completely collapsed. The pain was unbearable, like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. It was the worst kind of betrayal. I had always imagined that the two of us could weather any storm, but this was a tidal wave that drowned everything. For days, I wandered through life like a ghost, barely able to function, consumed by the betrayal. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and the memories of what I'd uncovered haunted my every moment. But somehow, in the midst of it all, I found the strength to make a decision. I filed for divorce. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew I couldn't continue living in that shadow of deceit. In March, I packed up and left for Poland again, throwing myself back into work, hoping that distance would help me heal. 3 months passed, and just as I thought I was beginning to piece my life back together, she reached out again. At first, it was a message here, a call there, pleading, begging for forgiveness. She said she didn't know what had come over her, that she couldn't live without me. She swore she didn't want anyone else, that I was the only one who ever truly mattered to her. I tried to ignore her, to shut out her words, but it was impossible. I still loved her, despite everything. The hurt was deep, yes, but so were my feelings for her. The pull was undeniable, and no matter how much I wanted to resist, I found myself drawn back to her. The love that had never quite left my heart whispering that maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. Despite everything inside me telling me it was the wrong decision, I forgave her. It was clear that doing so would mean lowering myself, disregarding my pride, But the thought of being apart from my daughter haunted me more than anything. That separation, that distance from my child, felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. So, I gave her another chance, hoping, no, convincing myself that maybe this time, things would truly change. After 7 long months in Poland, I returned home and brought her back with me. The first few weeks, she seemed like a completely different person. Humble, eager to do anything to keep us together. She did everything she could to make up for the past. It felt like she was constantly trying to prove herself, as though she was just as desperate as I had been to make this work, to rebuild what had been broken. I wanted to believe her transformation was genuine. In a bold move, I decided to take her with me to Poland. I thought a change of scenery might help. I even found her a job, hoping that in this new environment, with no distractions and no past temptations, she might truly change for the better. We left our daughter with my parents, trusting that she'd be well cared for while we tried to start anew. For a while, everything seemed hopeful. It was almost like we were building the relationship we should have had from the beginning. But deep down, there was always this lingering fear, a voice in the back of my mind whispering, what if she doesn't change? What if I'm setting myself up for the same heartache all over again? But I silenced those doubts, forcing myself to focus on the present, on the possibility of a fresh start. I didn't want to believe that my efforts, my forgiveness, would be in vain. When we arrived in Poland, I thought we were starting over, building from scratch on the ruins of our past. The first couple of weeks seemed calm. I kept telling myself that we could really make it this time. I wanted so badly to believe that she was truly committed to changing. But deep down, I had my doubts, and it wasn't long before those doubts were confirmed. About 3 weeks into our stay, I stumbled across something in her phone, a conversation with a local guy. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was harmless. But the tone, the frequency of the messages, it was all too familiar. My heart sank. Then, just a couple of days later, she didn't come home for the night. Not once, but twice. Each time, she had some vague excuse, but it was clear. Something was seriously wrong. I started noticing small changes. She had new jackets, bags, things I hadn't seen before. She even started buying herself bottles of expensive cognac. I knew how much they cost, and there was no way she could afford them with the little pocket money I'd given her. I had deliberately kept her on a tight budget, knowing her tendency to waste money. So where was she getting the cash? The answer hit me like a truck one evening when I found $50 stashed in her wallet. I hadn't given her that kind of money. When I confronted her, she danced around the issue, offering weak explanations, but eventually, the ugly truth came out. She had been sleeping with men for money. Not just one, 3 different guys. I felt numb. After everything we had been through, after all the chances I had given her, this was the final betrayal. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was the fact that she had thrown away every shred of trust, respect, and love we had left. And this time, I wasn't sure I had anything left to forgive. After learning all of this, I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of the betrayal had crushed me, and I felt like there was no way forward with her by my side. Without hesitation, I picked up the phone and called her father. I explained the situation as calmly as I could and asked him to come and take her away. He worked nearby, just about 130 kilometers from where we were, so it wasn't too much of a journey for him. The very next day, he came and took her back home. Before they left, I made it clear to both of them that under no circumstances would I allow her to take our child. I wasn't going to hand over our daughter to someone who had so carelessly shattered our lives. Surprisingly, she didn't even put up much of a fight. It was as though she had already made peace with the idea of losing custody of our child. My daughter is now living with my parents, and I have no plans to ever let her mother take her back. I know in my heart that my child will grow up in a loving and stable environment with us, even if it's without her biological mother. The example that her mother has set is not one I want her to follow. With my parents and me raising her, she will grow up to be a good person, surrounded by love, care, and the values that truly matter. So, that's the story of my life, raw and painful as it may be. I don't think words could ever fully capture the roller coaster of emotions I've been through. Betrayal, heartbreak, anger, and a deep sense of loss. It's hard to make sense of how things turned out, especially when you've poured your heart and soul into someone. But, like they say, time heals all wounds. I believe, eventually, things will settle, and I'll find peace again. As for her, she's still reaching out, still asking for forgiveness, still claiming she's sorry for what she's done. But this time, I've learned my lesson. There won't be a second chance. The pain of betrayal is something I don't think I can endure again, let alone a third time. I've forgiven once, and even then, it nearly destroyed me. A third betrayal would be the end of me, and I'm not willing to let that happen. It's taken everything in me to find the strength to move on, and for my daughter's sake, I need to keep moving forward. I want her to grow up in a home where trust and respect are values she learns from the very beginning. So, I'll carry on, no matter how hard it gets. After all, life moves forward, and so must I.